this was super cute. There's a seedy little motel in Yucca Valley. Same font and everything, just like the Sands Hotel in Vegas that the Rat Pack used to perform at. So it's kind of like a little moniker of that, except, yeah, I looked at the reviews online and not that great.
Here I am at the notorious Joshua Tree Inn in Joshua Tree, California. It's out in the desert, about 2.5 miles from Los Angeles. The hotel is famous because of its famous residents, Gram Parsons and Donovan. Those are just to name a few, though. There are so many, still even, they come out here. A lot of rock stars, a lot of musicians come out and stay at the Joshua Tree Inn when they want to get away for a weekend or just escape for a little bit. I was so tempted to book a room, but they were not open, so I was not able to. We'll definitely be doing a vlog in the future from the inside of the Joshua Tree Inn. I came specifically for the history of Gram Parsons. Gram Parsons was considered a pioneer of the country rock movement of the late 60s into the 70s until his death on September 19, 1973 at the age of 26. Though Gram achieved success in his lifetime, he was never a superstar per se. He did influence many bands, including the Rolling Stones, the Eagles. He was a member of 2 country rock bands, the Byrds and the Flying Burrito Brothers. He later became a solo artist, and he often performed with Emmylou Harris. In the years after his death, he has definitely become a legend. In the late 60s, the Joshua Tree National Monument later became a national park, became a hangout for celebrities and musicians because this was out of the way and it was a haven only a few hours from Los Angeles. Gram Parsons was introduced to the Mojave Desert around this time and would frequent Joshua Tree on the weekends, accompanied by his manager Phil Kaufman and Keith Richards of the Rolling Stones. Some of Gram's country influence can be heard in the music of the Rolling Stones. He used to hang out at local bars here and would often stay here at the Joshua Tree Inn. He would visit the national park at night looking at the stars and searching the heavens for UFOs. During one of his friend's funerals in 1973, a few months prior to his own death, it was discussed between Gram Parsons and his manager Phil Kaufman that if either of them were to die prematurely, they wanted their body taken to the desert at Joshua Tree. They were to have one last drink with the corpse and then burn the body in the desert. This was the pact that led to the events. Just a few months after this, Gram checked into room 8 at the Joshua Tree Inn on September 17, 1973 for a few days with friends. During the visit, Gram consumed a lot of drugs and alcohol. Kaufman was not there on this trip. After 2 days of heavy partying, on the 19th, Gram overdosed on morphine and alcohol. With Phil being Gram's road manager and his good friend, he was immediately called, but by the time they arrived there, Gram's body had already been removed and was in the morgue of the hospital in Yucca Valley. Kaufman gathered up Gram's belongings, cleaned up any drug evidence, and headed back home to LA. After a day of drinking and thinking about the pact, he remembered Gram's dislike for his stepfather in Louisiana, and he was thinking about the words at the friend's funeral a few months earlier that he had not wanted a long, depressing religious service with family and friends. So Kaufman went into action. Kaufman called the mortuary in Yucca Valley only to find out that Gram's body would be driven to the LA International Airport and then flown to New Orleans. He called the airline's mortuary service and found out that the body would arrive that evening. Then he recruited several friends that knew about the pact and borrowed a hearse that was used for camping trips. It had no license plates and several broken windows, but he thought it would do. They tried on suits but decided they looked so ridiculous, so they changed into their tour clothes: Levi's, cowboy boots, cowboy hats, and jackets with Sin City stitched on the back. They loaded the hearse up with beer and Jack Daniels and headed for the airport. Kaufman and his friend Michael Martin arrived at the loading dock just as the flatbed truck rolled up with the Parsons casket. A drunk Kaufman somehow persuaded an airline employee that the Parsons family had changed its plans and wanted to ship the body privately on a chartered flight. While Kaufman was in the office signing paperwork with a phony name, a policeman pulled up blocking the hangar door. Seeing this, Kaufman was sure that he would get caught, but the officer suspected nothing. He just sat there. Kaufman walked over towards him and waved his copy of the paperwork and said, "Hey, can you move that car?" The officer apologized and moved the car and then actually helped him to load the casket onto the gurney and into the back of the unlicensed liquor-filled hearse. Martin got in the hearse and attempted to drive out of the hangar, only to run into the wall on his way out. The officer observed all of it. He commented, "I wouldn't want to be in your shoes now." Then he left. The two drunk body snatchers left the airport with the body of their friend. They stopped at a gas station in Cabazon near the Interstate 10 dinosaurs in the years before Casino Morongo existed. They filled a gas can and they headed back to Joshua Tree with the body of Gram Parsons. They went into Joshua Tree and drove until they were too drunk to drive anymore. They stopped at Cap Rock in the National Monument, a landmark geographical location, and unloaded Gram's body in the coffin. Kaufman saw car lights in the distance and knew that the police were coming. He quickly opened the casket. He played a joke on Parsons that they used to do in life. He doused Gram with gasoline and threw the match in the casket. The two watched as a giant fireball rose from the coffin. The skin on Graham's naked body began blistering, the ashes rising into the desert night. As the headlights in the distance got closer, the pair drove off and headed home for Los Angeles. After a trip home filled with close calls, Kaufman and Martin laid low. The morning after their return, the newspapers were full of the story of the rock star's hijacked and burnt corpse. A few years after the incident, Kaufman ran into Keith Richards, and Keith thanked him and said, "I heard that you took care of our pal." Kaufman's adventure has been legendary in rock and country music circles ever since. Hoof, paw, and foot only, folks. Pioneertown is an unincorporated community of the Morongo Basin region of the San Bernardino's high desert. The historical town was originally incorporated in 1946 and fell into the hands of San Bernardino County in the late 1960s. Actor Dick Curtis started up the town in 1946 as an 1880s themed live-in, Old West living, breathing motion picture set. The town was designed to provide a place for production companies to enjoy while also using their businesses and homes in movies. Hundreds of westerns and early television shows were filmed in Pioneertown, including The Cisco Kid and Judge Joy Bean. Dick Curtis, Roy Rogers, and Russell Hayden were some of the original developers and investors. Gene Autry filmed his weekly show in town for 5 years, using the buildings and businesses as part of the film set. Bacon and eggs and steak, $1. I want to hang out with these guys. Oh, there's chickens. Fine ware for fine folks, cracked pots for the rest of y'all. And Pioneer Bowl is still an operating bowling alley. The third building to be built in Pioneertown, Pioneer Bowl was used for recreation for the residents, actors, and crew after filming. Roy Rogers made the front page of the local newspaper when he opened the bowl with a strike on one lane. He bowled a 2-11 game in his cowboy boots with Dale Evans and 200 townfolk watching. Pioneertown, Yucca Valley, Joshua Tree, they are great places to get away for the day, get away for a few hours. They're filled with history, as we have just seen, from Gram Parsons to Roy Rogers, Gene Autry. It's a very beautiful and absolute change of scenery, which sometimes you need, especially when you live in Los Angeles. So I encourage you all to take a little visit out to the Wild West. It's not a Western set unless there is horse poop.